Hello and welcome to another tutorial from CamiPaige Boutique. I'm Brooke Tannehill and today I'm going to show you how I made this alcohol ink, glitter, waterfall, ombre, and drip barreled tumbler. As always, all the products I use will be listed in the description below, and you may even find a coupon code or two that saves you some coin. Also, come join our exclusive Facebook group where you can take advantage of upcoming freebies and giveaways that you aren't going to want to miss. So without further hesitation, let's go ahead and get started. For this design, I am starting with a 25-ounce barrel tumbler. You can find tumblers like this at AB Design Co. I have them listed in the description below, but I am going to fully prep this tumbler by sanding down the sides. I'm using a 60 grit sanding block, and I feel like it just makes this whole process easier to really just kind of scuff up all the surface. Then I'm going to come in with alcohol, spray it down, and just wipe it with a shop towel that has no lint so it doesn't leave any residue behind. Once that is all done, it's time to spray paint the tumbler. So I just spray painted this with a semi-gloss white spray paint, let it dry, and then I mixed up about probably 10 milliliters of epoxy. Now you're not going to use the full 10 milliliters of the epoxy. You just want to apply a super thin coat over the entire surface of the cup just to make sure that you have enough to act as an adhesive before you apply your glitter. So I'm just taking my time. I know you can't really tell, but I am spinning the cup around to make sure I have a nice, even, smooth coat over the entire surface of my cup. Once that's done, I'm going to grab silk from Peachy Olive Glitters and let her rip, tater chip, and just cover the entire surface of this cup. We don't need to really worry about doing a second coat of glitter since the epoxy method has such amazing coverage. So I'm just going to cover this tumbler, let it dry for about 2 hours, and then move into the next steps of this cup. Once that's dry, I did seal the tumbler once with Rust-Oleum clear gloss spray paint, but you want the glitter to be raw. You do not want a coat of epoxy. And what I did is I took different just pink color alcohol inks and I started just to drip them down the tumbler. Now, I started probably about 1 inch to 1.5 inches from the base because I knew I was going to do an ombre and a drip over the bottom of this cup. But all I'm doing is just taking the alcohol inks and just starting to drip the ink down the cup. Now, I used the rectangle bottles that you see here. I think this one is actually one of the intense inks from Krafty. I think it's their fuchsia color. But I actually found that even though I'm using a lot of the rectangular bottles, the Tim Holtz brand bottles, which are more of the rounded, like the rounded tip, works better for getting more of those precision stripes. Don't get me wrong. The colors that come from the Krafty alcohol inks are absolutely amazing. It's just the bottles for the other alcohol inks like the Tim Holtz and like the Ranger, they just worked better. So I started with that fuchsia and then I came in with purple. This is another Krafty intense ink. I just love it, and I'm just simply dabbing the alcohol ink down the surface of the cup to get the desired look that I'm going for. I will say I did grab some of the Tim Holtz Patina inks. I'll show them here in a second, and they have kind of a pearl sheen to them. It actually showed up really pretty on this tumbler. So mix up your inks. Don't feel like you have to only use alcohol inks, and just play with it until you're happy with the coverage. So here I'm going in with a Bria Reese ink. I believe this was rosé, I want to say, but I can definitely list the colors that I used, and this would work for so many different color schemes. You don't have to keep with just like my signature, as I'm kind of saying, pinks and purples that I typically go with. Then I'm going to come in with the alloy gold alcohol ink from Tim Holtz or Ranger. And this is when I really discovered that these bottles applied really well to the cup. It gives definitely more of that like straight and more controlled look to it, and you kind of can move where you want the inks a little bit better. So I really liked the gold. It added just that little bit of detail to it. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I'm just going to kind of add it in here and there until I'm happy with the coverage of the inks. And again, I know I say this in all of my tumblers, but all my tumbler tutorials, there is no right or wrong. So just kind of let her rip. Make sure that you're happy with how it looks. And if you're not sure at first, keep going or stop and come back to it. it's art. You can't say that, oh my gosh, I did this wrong, and you're always learning something. Once I'm happy with my alcohol ink placement, I'm going to seal my alcohol inks a little bit differently than I do my glitter. So I'm going to do a pretty healthy coat of Camar varnish from Krylon, let that dry, and then I'm going to go in with a layer of Krylon's triple thick. I find that these two sealers really protect the pigments and don't get rid of any of the beautiful ink color. So I do that, and then I'm going to go in with a coat of epoxy after those two coats are dry, and then it's time to move into our next step. Now again, this cup already has a coat of epoxy on it, so I sealed in my glitters, or my alcohol inks. I went in with a coat of epoxy, and now this is my second coat. So unlike what I was doing before with just the epoxy method for applying the glitter, I'm adding a little bit more to this tumbler. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we're going to be doing a waterfall technique of the glitter type of how we're going to blend it, or it's kind of called an ombre. I'm calling it an ombre. It's not really, but I'm going to probably do about 10 milliliters over the entire surface of the tumbler. And then I am going to grab Athena from Peachy Olive Glitters. So I'm going to start on that bottom rim, making sure that the bottom is nice and coated. And then, just like I do my regular ombres, I'm going to tilt the cup down at about a 45-degree angle. And then I'm holding the glitter shaker that you can kind of see in the frame, probably about 12 to 14 inches up in the air, and just lightly sprinkling to get that gold placement and blend it up to the cup, or kind of up to the middle of the cup. I didn't want to go all the way up to the middle. I just wanted to kind of blend it enough to get that coverage. Then I'm going to seal this glitter, go in with a coat of epoxy, and then we are to this step that you see right here. So for this part, I wanted to be a little extra, and what I wanted to do is have the drip on this cup kind of not start at the bottom, but probably like a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Since this is a tapered cup and you can't just get regular tape around the bottom, I just used a straight line of tape around the bottom. I used a couple of pieces and just kind of put them onto the tumbler to kind of get that smooth line around the bottom of the cup, because you want the tape to lay as smooth as possible. And then I moved my vinyl cutter blade up to the second row, and then I'm just going to spin the cup to cut that painter's tape. What this is going to do is give me a perfectly straight line to base my drips off of. And I had tried this before and my epoxy flash cured on me, so I was like, screw this. I'm just going to do it the easy way with a tulip drip. So I get that perfectly straight line, and then I just grabbed my just slick tulip paint. I'm not sponsored by them, but I find that this is the easiest way for me to do drips. And then I'm going to do a pretty thick bead over the top of that painter's tape. It's fine, and the reason why we're doing that is so when I pull the tape, I'm going to have a perfectly crisp line, but I'm just doing a pretty thick bead around that kind of line of tape that we started, making sure that I have it in covered, and then I'm just going to gently tap the cup, and look how easy that freaking drip was. I love it. Then once that was all the way I liked it, I came in with Belieber from Peachy Olive Glitters and just made sure that I coated that drip. When you're doing these, you want to make sure that you're coating the drips from every angle, otherwise you can miss some spots and not get that full glitter coverage. And then as soon as I have the glitter covering everything the way I like it, I'm going to pull that tape so that we don't have any weird tape stuck to the cup or underneath that epoxy drip. Come back in and touch up that bottom rim, let that dry, and then we can move on to the next parts of this tumbler. I let the drip fully dry, and I brushed off any excess with a chip brush, sealed the bottom glitter twice with Rust-Oleum clear gloss spray paint, let that fully dry, and then I just came in with a coat of epoxy. So the reason why I really have stopped showing me epoxying the cup, but I wanted to show this here because I wanted to show you that it's not scary to epoxy this type of tumbler. I know the different shapes can sometimes be daunting, but what you do is you just take your time, make sure you got enough epoxy. This is Artistry's 1-to-1 fast set. I mixed up about 20 milliliters, and it was enough to coat all of this beautifulness that you can see here. But you're just gonna take your time to apply the epoxy, and make sure that you take your gloved finger and get out any of the pooling that might happen in the inside of those drips, because it's just not cute and it's not a great look when you're going for all of these added layers of this design. Torch the cup as needed. This is more out of habit. It's not something that you really, like, I need to do with this epoxy, but it just gives me that beautiful shine that I love. I let this dry for about 2 to 3 hours, and while it was turning, it was time to start with the decal. The SVG for this tumbler can be found on Creative Fabrica, and I have to tell you, I started just thinking I wanted to do these two colors, just like the purple and the pink that you see here. Both of these vinyls are from Vinyl Fun from Everyone. I will link them down in the description below. But what happened is I layered them. I thought the color was great. It just wasn't what I wanted. So I'm going to show kind of my hacks for applying this to a tumbler, because I know it's hard to get it on this kind of shape of the cup. But what you're going to do is actually heat up that decal first, heat up the surface of the tumbler, and then you're gonna see how easy these decals go on. So I'm gonna fold it in half so that I can apply the decal starting from the inside and working my way down. Nick wanted to come in and help since he is my vinyl pro, but you're just going to take your time just working your way from the inside out on these decals. And since the vinyl is heated up and the surface of the cup is, it allows you to lay the decals down on these curved surfaces so easy without getting a bunch of bubbles. So you can see there just how wonderfully that went on the cup, even though it's bigger on this tumbler surface, and it just looks amazing. Now, I didn't like it. I wasn't completely sold, so I decided to be bougie and take an extra step. So what I did is I laid down a piece of white vinyl that you see there, and then I'm taking another piece of Artistry's shape tape. So this is double-sided tape, and I'm laying it down over the top of that vinyl. What this allows it to happen is I get that bright white background cut in the specific shape that I want. So for this instance, it is the Be Kind decal. I cut it on the fabric setting on my Cricut, and then I'm just going to pull this up all together, and I'm going to show you how easy it weeds once you get it off the mat. Getting it off the mat's the tough part, but once you get it cut, you can see it just kind of easily comes apart, and it just works beautifully. So I'm just going to kind of take out those pieces, get them laid down, and then I did decide that one of the stars did come off in a couple of areas, and it just didn't cut correctly. So I decided just to kind of leave those off and let the purple really shine through. So you're going to apply this to your transfer tape just like normal, and you'll see how easy this goes on. And what I did for all of this is I used the Cricut offset panel to just do, like, I think it was 0.025 offsets for each of these, and it came out beautifully. And you can really see, maybe not so easily here in this video, but it came out with the perfect just amount of the different colors showing on each of the layers. So you can see the pink well, you can see the purple well, and then I did have to cut the transfer tape a little bit just to get it lined up the way I wanted, since this was a smaller part of the decal. But I'm just going in there, and then what you see here is that top layer of the shape tape coming off, and it's just revealing that double-sided sticky tape for us to apply our glitter on. So yeah, I liked it, decided that I didn't want the white on there, and I just left the 2 purple stars that you see there. So I'm gonna pull that top transfer tape, and then I'm gonna go back in with the silk like you see here, and just cover the entire surface of that shape tape that we applied. I'm then just going to lightly burnish the glitter into the shape tape. You really don't have to do this. This is just more of a step just to make sure that that glitter is nice and coated. And then I'm gonna come in with a chip brush, and you can see how beautifully that turned out. Now, I probably should have done this before I applied the decal, but I forgot. So I'm actually showing you guys what I did, but you probably should expose your top rims before you apply your shape tape, just so none of the debris sticks to the double-sided sheets. But I just came in with my flap wheel, did one good fell swoop around that top surface, exposing the stainless steel, and then used my sanding block to kind of clean up the edges. Then I went in with a coat of epoxy. I use about 20 milliliters, let that fully cure. I use Artistry's 1-to-1 fast set. And then I decided I wanted to set off the drip that we had applied with this fuchsia shape tape that matched the alcohol inks that we had applied. And I have to say, this is kind of a process doing it with this shape tumbler, but I promise you can get it wonderfully. Just take your time and make sure that you have it applied the way you like it and as straight as possible. It's just with this kind of rounded surface, it's hard to get it as straight as you would like it. So take your time. Again, you'll be able to knock it out of the park. It's just going to test your patience a bit with this shape tumbler, but it's not anything you can't overcome. Once I got this on and in a good spot, I sealed it, and then I went in with 2 final coats of epoxy, and this baby was done. I hope this tutorial inspires you, and I can't wait to see what you create. If you have any questions about any of the steps or information, please feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to help. As always, thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me. If you like this tutorial, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see future videos. You can also ring the bell so you're notified of all future cut making goodies. Thank you again. I love you guys. Bye.